The majority of people hate networking, and we're going to flip it around and make it awesome.
Everyone thinks that networking is about sending cold DMs on LinkedIn or awkwardly mingling at a conference happy hour. But that's definitely not how executives approach networking.
So I think as that young person or as that more senior person, we're on this, we should be we're on the hunt for.
That's Mo Bunnell. He's a business development expert and the author of Give to Grow, one of my favorite books on networking. Mo trains managing directors, consultants, and lawyers on how to use networking to get new clients and grow your business without the ick factor. And in this video, I'll break down strategies for always adding value, building your protomoy list of VIPs, keeping track of all your contacts' key details, and creating a system to maintain regular touch points. And trust me, as someone who's done over 5,000 networking meetings in my own life, Mo knows his stuff. Let's jump in.
So, Mo, let's start with definitional terms.
Yep.
How do you relate to the word networking?
That's great. Honestly, I don't like it. And I think how you've sort of redefined it with new vocabulary, like words matter. There's something about networking that turns people off. I'd mentioned that study before. And what they found was that, and it was specifically with lawyers. So we're talking about high-end professionals here, folks like that are on our podcast, our clientele, your podcast, your clientele, basically high-achieving people with a deep expertise. And what they found was that people that went to networking events actually hated it. They dreaded it. In one case, a majority of people wanted to take a shower afterwards, which we know from psychology means that when you want to wash yourself, you mentally feel dirty. It turns into physical manifestation of wanting to clean yourself, and that's associated with networking. But one group didn't feel that way, and the group was leaders. When leaders thought about networking, because they didn't need the relationship ecosystem, they actually entered into events like networking events, whatever, conferences, whatever it is. They felt that they went into that with the frame of helping people. And what they found more meta around this is we don't have to be a leader or a non-leader or anything like that. When we walk into these kind of events thinking, I'm going to see how many people I can help, people actually love meeting new people versus when they walk into events and they feel like, how much can I get from people? It's very rare for somebody to actually enjoy that. They dread it. They feel like they need to because somebody told them to, but they actually resist, go off into a corner, play on their phone, leave early, that kind of thing. So just kicking back to you, I think this mindset of am I taking or am I helping is the number one thing we can do to reframe things and actually enjoy this.
I love this. So you mentioned the phrase helping and giving. We had spoken, and many of our listeners have read the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. And
it's fantastic.
Very, very brief cliff notes would be there are three types of people. Most people are matchers, which is quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. There are takers. We know those people. They're talking to you at a conference and they're looking over your shoulder to see who's more important than you to talk to. And they just always want something. They show up when they want something.
Yeah.
And then there's givers, which are just kind of this selfless act of helping, as you said. Is it a fair statement that most people approach networking / relationship building through the lens of matching?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that I actually know. I think what I hear and what we do a lot in our classes, we train over 50,000 high-end experts at this point on sort of relationship skills that drive commercial results. What I hear a lot of times that I do know is true is people dreading it. And the feeling of they dislike it, but mostly because they don't like the idea of taking, or that I'm trying to meet people to take because the success rates are low. It doesn't feel right. They want to take a shower, all the things we talked about. But they actually don't know what to do. And so what we teach in our workshops is like one of the frameworks actually in our book called Give to Grow, which to some extent, I think I quote Adam Grant and we probably cite about 100 studies in the book. A couple are Adams, and his stuff's so good. But one of the things that we teach is if you can go into these type of events, whether it's a coffee chat with somebody you've met for the first time or walking into that conference where you're trying to meet people, is if we can focus on a give to get, some type of offer that we can make to be helpful to somebody else. So a 3-hour workshop on something, a 1-hour topical discussion on what are the last deals that have closed in the last quarter, and where are the trends for your particular type of industry, depending on the conference we're at. If there's some kind of offer we can make to somebody that's a go-to give to get, air quotes for your audio listeners, is that can reframe everything from us looking to find if there's a match, looking to ask questions, looking to make offers of helpfulness that will transcend out of this environment we're in now, the conference room or whatever. But if we can look to be helpful and have ideas in our mind of what those might be, we can flex off those. But by walking in looking to be helpful and sort of having a plan, that changes everything from the negative to the positive.
Yeah, beautiful. So I wanted to, so this is a very real life situation that I get often. So a lot of folks on this listening are like director at an investment bank or whatever the equivalent is at a law firm, maybe like a junior partner,
Yep.
or in a consulting firm. And they have been the doers for
Yeah.
the long time. They're the ones that do the power. You all do PowerPoint. Like we know your secrets. Your secret's safe with us. You all do PowerPoint. They've been doing the PowerPoints and the Excel models for a decade or so, kind of early 30s. And they go to their boss and they say, I want to be a managing director. And the boss is like, great. Well, to become a managing director, you need to bring business. And let's just say it's a telco company, right? You need to bring us a company that wants to go public, that wants to buy another company and so on. Now, this person they're 32 years old. They have been working 80 to 100 hours a week doing the work. And sometimes they don't have huge relationships or they don't think they have these like huge networks. And now their boss is like, find a way to get me an M&A transaction. And they're like, where the fuck do I begin? And so instantly their mind goes to like LinkedIn. Like, does it mean I comment on people's posts on LinkedIn, or does it mean that I like go to my, Harvard reunion and just like look at everyone's bio and be like, telco, not telco, telco, not telco. But they really feel like they're in their 30s and they feel like they're like just graduated from college, where like you just kind of this fish out of water. Like you have no idea where to begin. Where does someone like that begin? Senior in their career, early in their relationship building trajectory, and seemingly needing to catch this fish that seems like just, like a 10,000, I don't know, like 1,000-pound fish, right? That seems impossible to catch.
Yeah, they don't even have a fishing rod.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you supposed to do? Wrestle it in the water?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a real practical question because I can't remember. Are we recording on video or are we audio only?
We are on video.
This is amazing. Okay, I'm going to show something then. So one of the facing pages in the new book, Give to Grow, is this, and then I'm showing it on screen now. And Kay, you're going to love this. So we realized this as we were actually writing the manuscript. And the nut is that somebody that's making this transition, use the perfect words that we use, is that making the transition from doing the work to also winning the work. Every move that made them successful so far isn't just different than the move that will make them successful in the future. It's the exact opposite. And this is really insightful for that person you're talking about that's in the middle of the transition, because that's the hardest place you can be. They're still getting pummeled from above, having them do the work and get the war room ready or write the transaction if they're a lawyer, or do the work in the consulting or whatever. But they also have to start transition to winning the work. And that's a real difficult place. So the moves that are different, the exact opposites, in doing the work, clients respond always. They may respond later than you want, but they're going to reply to give you the data you need to put the packet together to send to the board or whatever. But in winning the work, they're rarely going to respond. Invite them 10 people to a webinar, maybe one replies. Emails, they need to be long and offer clarity. Here are the 7 things we need to get the SLT readout ready for next week. But emails, when winning the work, that's doing the work, winning the work, they need to be short and offer helpfulness. Our rule of thumb is 50 words or less, because that's one screen and Outlook on a phone. Man, that's really short, right? Here's a thought piece, thought view. Ping me if you have questions. Beloved, I'd be happy to introduce you to our expert who wrote this. I think it'd be valuable for you. Like really short and sharp. Communication, doing the work, predictable and uncomfortable. Winning the work, fluid and uncomfortable. Winning the work or doing the work, the best answers win. Winning the work, the best questions win. Doing the
Ooh.
work, a full presentation, the 72-page PowerPoint makes sense, but don't bring that to a lunch meeting. Winning the
Mhm.
work, a blank page is best. And you can see the rest. But the idea is that when we're doing the work, every move is around creating certainty. We're going to get the work done on time, under budget, and with the best outcome. When we're winning the work, it's all about possibility. So if I
Mhm.
come back to your question about like, just what does somebody do? Now I'll be hyper practical and stop sharing here. Two things. One is write down a list of any opportunities that you've been involved in, the kind of things that you might be able to discuss with clients. At the very beginning, that might be a very short list, the beginning of making the transition. But that's one list. You just need to have a list of these are the CEOs I might have talked to that might be willing to or interested in selling the business over the next 3 years. If you're an investment banker, here's the PE firm that might hire me for some more transactional work if I'm a lawyer, things like that. We do want a list of opportunities that will grow over time.
Okay.
The
And
main
our
thing we want to,
opportunities are those are people, these are networking targets, so to speak.
I would call it anything that has commercial possibility where someone else needs to say yes to it.
Okay.
So if I'm a lawyer, this is some revenue, this is some transactional work that I could bill time for.
Got it.
So our opportunity list would be,
Potential
it could
clients,
also be,
effectively.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I would have each row of it be where the other side can say yes or no. So I might
Mm,
have 3 opportunities for transactional work at one PE firm because there's different people that are hiring,
yep.
things like that.
Got it.
So that's one list. And then the other list are, to your point, relationships.
Mhm.
And for most professionals, 10 to 15 is plenty. This is where
Um,
you would say somebody might want to have 100, but the more you get, the less likely you're going to have a deep relationship. So where's
mm,
the leverage? You might have relationships for people internally that can start to feed work to you. You might have relationships directly with clients or prospects. You also might have relationship with strategic partners. If I'm an investment banker, maybe there's a senior lawyer who could sort of recommend me
yeah.
or another expert or somebody like that. So I'll wrap it up with this is that the first thing people need to do is start to make a plan. And the 2 views you want are here are the opportunities I could potentially win. I'm always updating that. Here are the relationships most important to my future success. And I'm going to find a way to help those people in a meaningful way. Okay, your thoughts?
I love that. So one of the things that this brings me back to was one of the ways I got compensated when I was on Wall Street was to find new hedge funds. So I was a little bit like a VC. So it wasn't like getting new clients was the way I got compensated, but it was like, can you find a new deal effectively?
Yeah.
But it was specifically new hedge funds to invest in early. And so here, this is exactly to your point. So what I found in that list of 15 there were a few random examples. Every time a new hedge fund launches, what do? They need office space, they need fund formation documents, legal documents, and they need an IT system. And then they need marketing presentations. So they need 4 things. Once I found who, by the way, they all use the same 4
The
of
best
those things.
people out there. Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
And
Yeah.
so once you establish a relationship with those 4 people, then you saw literally every single hedge fund. Every single hedge fund needs real estate, right? And so it makes total sense. And also I could see how daunting it is because it's almost like a second, even as you were saying, lawyers need to do deals. I'm like, oh yeah, like it wouldn't necessarily occur to me as a banker to befriend lawyers. But how does one start to think of these like, the word that comes to mind, my word is like these kind of secondary kind of partners. You use strategic partners. How
Yep.
can you help someone kind of brainstorm? Let's just use this banker again that's trying to source M&A and public offerings.
Yep.
How can they kind of prime themselves to identify who these targets are?
Yeah, a lot of times, this is a great question, by the way, because to your point, most people just think, "Oh, I can only call on people that could be clients someday," and that's great. I mean, especially if you have the type of work that's recurring, but a lot of professionals' type of work is episodic. Like if I'm in complex disputes or class action defense or something, if I'm a lawyer, I actually might not know who my next client might be because I don't know who's going to get paper served, or who's going to have who's going to need defense work. So anyway, everybody can use strategic partners, and some people, almost all their entire list should be strategic partners because they don't know who to exactly call on, but they can call on who could refer them in. So to your point, like, well, who do you know who that is? Two ideas. One is I would focus on the most prestigious firms. So when you think of like expert witness, there's certain, I won't say who there are, many of our clients, but there's certain firms that are known as bigger and bolder and better than others. Well, you might want to focus on that versus a single shingle person. Number one. Number two, it's a little easier to catch somebody on the rise up than it is after they're already there. So you
Yes.
might not call on a community leader at a big expert witness firm. You might find somebody that's about your stage and start investing in their success, and maybe even create a group of these people. Like we have a thing we teach in our full Grow Big training. It's a comprehensive system for becoming great at growth, but we have 16 different methods to foster new relationships. One of those is a value group. That's where you get a group of people together that's going to meet over time, discuss the same topic, and help each other succeed. So imagine if an investment banker put together a group with a transactional lawyer, a forensic accountant, maybe a communications expert. Like, you could start to cobble together a group of people that are going to help each other get great at growth. And by the way, they're going to develop a lot of trust with each other and start to help each other with leads and introductions and putting out events, like all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I think is
I
that
love
where you
that.
wanted to go, Kate?
I think that is so powerful. I think 2 points that really resonate. One is to you don't want the LeBron James when he's dropping, 40 points a game in the finals. You
Yeah.
want the LeBron James. I mean, LeBron is probably not the best example, but like when he's
Yeah.
a sophomore in high school, when people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, I think that this person has potential," and I
Right.
think it really illustrates the value too of, like, you want to find your peer. Let's say you're the banker, you want to find your peer at the law firm that in 5 years will be the partner, and in 5 years you'll be the MD, and then
Yep.
you'll be fishing the bigger fish, but you will have spent that 5 years of muscle memory together.
Yep.
What I also love is this idea of creating this little group, right? And
Yeah.
and I'm even thinking it's as simple as like a WhatsApp group
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, like the lawyer's like, did you see this deal? Did you see this deal? And someone's like, hey, interesting that this law firm represented, like, we've never seen them on this type of deal before. And then everyone's ears perk up. And then obviously you build a rapport. You grab dinner once a quarter, and then there's that growth together, and there's this combinatorial skills.
Yeah.
So I love that. Can I ask you about just like this philosophy of giving, right? Let's say that you've identified a bunch of people, some clients, some strategic partners. You're just starting to get to know them. They're not your friends yet, so to speak. Like, how do you figure out how you can help them?
Oh, this is great. Well, step one is to ask them. But I mean, joking aside, most people don't do that because they feel like, if you're the expert, I shouldn't ask anything. I should know all the answers. What's the exact opposite is true. So we have an idea. I touched upon it a little bit. It's in the book Give to Grow. There's a whole chapter on this, and it's called a give to get. And it's, how do you package up something valuable that has three criteria. Relatively speaking, it's easy for you, number one. Number two, it's valuable for somebody else. And number three, it'll lead to a next step. So you actually don't want to solve the entire problem, but you want to start educating, you want to start teaching, you want to start helping. Everything should start with helping. And what happens is the science of reciprocity kicks in. Dennis Reagan was the original researcher on this, where he found that people want to repay others even if they didn't ask for something. When we receive a gift, we just immediately response is we want to repay. And so if we meet somebody at a conference, the perfect phrase to offer a give to get is, would it be helpful if I blank? And we find that's much more effective than, do you want me to? For example, you get a yes more often. Would it be helpful if I've got an overview of the regs and how they're going to hit the retail industry if the House does pass this. And this is a big deal, especially for retail. A lot of people are seeing the magnitude of the change that's going to have to occur. and we're going to know in the next couple months if it's going to happen or not. Would it be helpful if we set up a Zoom call after the conference? And what I found about 30 minutes, I can walk you through the 7 things that we're seeing or the top things to pay
Mm,
attention to and exactly what to do for each. Would that be helpful? And then the person says, well, gosh, that'd be amazing. Now you've converted this whole awkward, this feeling of, are you going to take from me? We're at a networking event or whatever. You've converted that to a next step, leads to a next step. And now in that meeting, now you've taken the one to many event, the conference where, it's
got it.
unlikely to get something afterwards if you follow up after. You get the yes right then and there while you're in person. Now that you can convert over to actually having a substantive discussion afterwards. Is that where you wanted to go?
Yeah, and so that's an interesting because it requires some strategy there as well because you're
Yeah.
meeting someone and you're talking and you have to anticipate some of they might be telling you their struggles outright, right? Like, oh, I'm confused about this future regulatory regime, right?
Yep.
Or they may not say it outright, but you have to, this is where the creativity of it, like you have to like either find the right questions to tease it out,
Yep.
or you have to know enough about, have enough shared knowledge about the industry so that you know like what's around the corner. But I love that there is a next action because when I think of being helpful, and we will talk later about this in the less like selling context, more in just like cultivating long-term
Yep.
relationships. But I love that there is a like, oh, like there's a pitch, but it's kind of a free pitch, so to speak. Right. And
That's exactly
so
right.
it's hard to say no. I was thinking, so yesterday in my coaching business, someone passed and they're like, the timing's not right. But they left the door open. And so I immediately wrote back. I'm like, would it be helpful if every couple of months I checked in to see how things were going?
Yeah.
But I actually, now that I'm hearing this, it almost would be like, there might have been even like a better, like a more precise offer to help, which is like, I knew that this person was like very concerned about career growth. So
Mm.
then it would be like, would it be helpful if in 2 months I just give you like a recap of all the things that I've observed from my other clients about career
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah.
Am I doing
Yeah.
this right, Mo?
You are. And let me tell a story about we helped a client with this exact thing, and I think you'll see yourself in this. So he was a tax controversy attorney, and while he had some of his work with large corporations, he knew exactly who to call on. A bunch of his work is with high net worth individuals. Well, he doesn't know his next client's going to be because you don't know who IRS is going to send a letter to. So we devised this strategy. We know he wants to work with, billionaires and 100 millionaires and up on their tax controversy and their disputes with the IRS. It's not just an accounting thing, there's a legal element to it too. But he doesn't know who that's going to be. So we then thought backwards from that and thought, who are the perfect strategic partners? And he figured out that it's an office manager in a large accounting firm that's not the Big Four, because Big Four firms are largely practicing law without practicing law. They have some of the largest staffs of lawyers in the world, Big Four. So they have to caveat everything and say, hey, we're not practicing law. This isn't legal advice, but they actually, in a way they sort of do, or they at least cover a lot of the issues. So it's like from number 5, the Grant Thornton and the BDOs in the US, all the way to like the Cherry Beckerts would be the perfect clientele for him, or the strategic partners for him, and specifically the office manager, because that's who the partner is going to go, hey, I got a tricky situation here. Who should I call? So we thought, well, what do those office managers want to know?
Yeah.
They want to know and this is exactly how we framed a thought piece that he wrote. The 7 things not to do if you get a letter from the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
What a great thought piece. It has a number. What do we
Yeah.
want to do when we hear a number? We want to know what the 7 things are. It didn't say a bunch of stuff you shouldn't do. It was like, here are the 7 things. And by framing it with the double negative, here are the 7 things you should not do if you get this bad thing happen. Well, that just was really curiosity laden and sticky. Everybody wanted a thought piece. So he wrote it originally on his firm's website, Client Alert, but then we leveraged their PR team, and he ended up getting in like 30 of the city business chronicles. Like I live in Atlanta, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, where there's an organization that owns all those
Yeah.
all over the country. They loved it. Everybody published it. It rippled through the US. So then what he could do, he's got the thought piece. He could send it to all those office managers direct because they're on the website. Hey, Jane Smith, uh, city office manager of XYZ accounting firm. Here's a thought piece I wrote. Would it be helpful if we did a lunch and learn on the intricacies of this, and I could handle any questions that any of your partners have? Well, they're looking for CLE credits or continuing ed credits. So CPE and accounting. So he got like a hit rate of like 95% of these. And then he was running around on virtually doing all these sessions. And guess who the go-to person is that they call for issues? Well, he had to actually stop our project about a third of the way through because he's so overwhelmed with work. They had to like hire a
Wow.
bunch of new people. So
Yeah.
so circling back to you, you could you wouldn't have to do this bespoke for every person. You could come up with one really cool thought piece that you could use over and over and over again around career development or whatever. And then you send that along maybe with a Loom video of you talking through some of the important aspects for that person or a little bit of writing in the email or something.
Oh, you're spot on because I think I'm very good at kind of following up with every prospect and kind of nurturing, tepid leads.
Yeah.
But I do everything in a very kind of one-to-one kind of guerrilla warfare type thing. I'm like, I know you have this problem, so I address this problem. And then I know, you have this different problem, so I address this different problem with another person. But
Yep.
there's not that scale in it. So it actually becomes really exhausting. Whereas I could just I could kind of zoom out and be like, okay, these are the three types of problems that
Yeah.
20 people
Yeah.
have. So I just
Yeah.
write the thing three things.
Yeah. You nailed it.
And it's funny because I want to pivot the conversation to like individual marketing, maybe like flip our avatar to someone in their mid-20s.
Yep.
It's kind of like, it's not really trying to sell, but just planting the seeds for the long game. But one thing that I always tell this group is I always ask them, what's a question that you've been asked more than 3 times? Right. And I hear some of the not wackiest, they're just all over the place. Some of them would be like, where are your favorite, places to stay in, Mexico City? I live in LA. So Mexico City, very common destination. Someone else often asks me, what's your camera setup? Right? What lens do you have? What mic do you have? What lights do you have? And so on. And so I tell people, if someone asks you a question more than 3 times, write the answer out in a Google Doc. And then it's not like they're like, well, am I going to become a content? No, you're not going to become a content creator. Nothing like that, right? But when someone asks the question, you just send them the link to the Google Doc. And then guess what? They might forward the link to someone else. And then you have your knowledge and your act of service kind of like percolating, compounding out in the wild with you having to only have done it once. And so it's funny. It's like, I give that advice.
I love it.
But on the flip side, for my own business, I'm not doing my version of it. I'm doing a lot of like hand-to-hand combat on each person. So that is super helpful to hear. So let me take you back. Funny story is that I have a new group of listeners, and they're basically 18 to 25-year-olds in college, high school, college, and just started their careers on Wall Street that ask me questions on TikTok about career growth. And most of the questions are around networking. And so if I could take you back to, the early days of your career, how did you think about networking, right? Because we've talked a lot about the tactics of a sale or like being very precise about, an ask or an offer or a give or so on. But in a phase of life that's a little more fluid, a little less, the markers are not as clear. I'm 25 years old and I'm like, Mo, help me. I don't know anything about networking. Where do I begin?
Yeah. This is great. I'll give you three ideas. One is, and what's great is these same ideas could like work really well for people that are more senior. I'll tailor it to the way you wanted me to. But the first thing is make a list. Um, we call this, and we teach it in our classes. It's in the new book, Give to Grow. But the name we use for this is protomoi. Protomoi is a Greek word. There's no direct English equivalent. I learned it in college, that it meant first among equals. Some fluent Greek speakers have told me it means first in order, or that's the way they learned it. But these are your first among equal relationships. And that's relevant for the 64-year-old that's about to retire from investment banking. It's relevant for the 22-year-old right out of college. If you try to keep up with everybody, you'll keep up with nobody. So who are your first among equals? Usually 10 or 15 names is amazing.
Love that.
It might be fun to show your system, by the way, in a moment about how you keep in touch with people, because
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And maybe you've showed it on the show, but like when you showed it to me in California, I was like, oh yeah, you got it dialed in. So we might want to come back to that.
Okay, we
Um,
might. Yeah.
the second thing, so that's the first thing, is know who you're for. The
And
second
these
thing
are
is
like these are peers. They're not like the CEO of
oh,
Microsoft. They're your
yeah. So the way we frame it, thank you for that, because I was going too fast. I'm so slow, so close to the content. You want to write your list of the people that are most important to your career or your success in life.
Okay.
So that might be a mentor. It might be still a professor from college that you want to stay in touch with. It might be your boss's boss that you happen to know pretty well. It could be a client. Like it could be almost anybody. But generally speaking, we found it takes 2 or 3 minutes to write down that list. Like people know who they are.
Yeah.
And they can adjust over time, so you can modify it. So it's no big deal. So then the second thing is stay in touch. And the pro tip here is that my friend Marissa King, she's a researcher at Penn. She wrote a book called Social Chemistry. She shared with me that somewhere between 50 and 80% of the feeling of connectedness between two people has waned after 3 months of an interaction.
Got it.
So the half-life is a lot faster than we think. So I like to think for these 10 to 15 people on our protomoi list, you want to have something that keeps you top of mind once a month.
God. Once a
A
month.
little thought piece you send, that 50-word
Yeah.
email. Maybe it's a deep dinner conversation. Maybe you go surfing, whatever it is. So a practical tip there is block off the time. Block off the time for, an hour, say once a month or 90 minutes to just, for anybody you didn't naturally come into contact with, you're sending them a little thought piece, a little WhatsApp message says, hey, I think you were going to Iceland on the trip. How'd it go? Like sometimes it's just checking in lightly, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'll just add into there, that's where social media is super helpful.
yes.
Not because it's like go comment on their posts, but exactly you see that they're in Iceland. And then you're like, oh, I was in Iceland and I loved this restaurant in Reykjavik.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just
Yeah.
like there's nothing else. And there's no, there's no pomp and circumstance. Like you're in Iceland. I like this restaurant. Here's a piece of information that might help you. You're awesome. Or
You
I'm
nailed
thinking
it.
of you.
You nailed it. So say you went surfing 3 months ago. That was this deep bonding experience on a Saturday and beautiful weather. And you had a cocktail afterwards or whatever.
Mhm.
You'd probably have a protein shake. But then like in month 2 and 3, it's just these little pings that sort of just keep the magic alive. And that's good. And then the third thing I'd share is there's a ton of Jerry Berger was the initial researcher on this out of Santa Clara. The number one correlation to two people liking each other, he found, is commonality.
Yeah.
So I think as that young person or as that more senior person, we should be like a sleuth. We're a detective. We're on the hunt for commonality. What do we have in common? Is it that we both like the Kansas City Chiefs? They both went to, Stanford. We both enjoy surfing. We both went to the same mastermind and know what that's like, and some of the same commonality in people. Like whatever it is, that young person, I think a lot of times can get in their own way and think, I don't think I have in common with people older than me. That is not true. That is not true. Maybe you both love the same app. You read the same book. You vacation in the same spot. There's always something in common, and age can be completely diffused through commonality, but we've got to be on the hunt for it. Does that
Yeah.
help?
I think it's so helpful. You gave me goosebumps because this one, a lot of younger folks asked me, they say, look, I'm 22 years old. And if I had the chance to meet Bill Gates, what do I have to offer Bill Gates? Like, he can talk to anyone in the world. He can call the president of the United States. And apparently I never found the attribution, but apparently Bill Gates said, he's like, there's always something that a 22-year-old can offer me is perspective. And I think
Bingo.
about this all the time because when I meet young folks, I'm like so excited to meet young folks because so here's a question that I ask them all the time. I ask them, when you wake up, it's partially because I'm an internet geek, partially because I love like human behavior as it relates to technology. I ask these young kids, when you wake up, tell me the order of apps that you open in the morning.
Ooh, that's cool.
It's one of my favorite questions to ask. And then the next question I ask is, where do you get your news from? And that is just terrifying when you and I are of the same peer group. It's terrifying to hear the information like TikTok. So that's the question of perspective, right? Everyone has value to add to someone else. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I have no value to offer Khe or Mo, they're 20 years my senior. You're like, yeah, you see the world in a completely different lens. You interact with a completely different set of people. You have a lot to offer us. Your goal is just to find out which part of that perspective is interesting to us, right?
Yeah.
If I'm a fintech banker, or fintech VC, I'm interested in like, where do you bank, right? Are you banking at Chase or are you banking at Robinhood, right? That's a really interesting piece of information to me as a 45-year-old fintech investor. I wanted to ask you about the commonality thing because
can I build on one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I think this is so important. It's standing right next to what you just talked about. When we were writing the book Give to Grow, one of the things my publisher asked me is like, hey, Mo, what gets in people's way to implement deep relationships? I mean, the whole subtitle is Give to Grow, invest in relationships to build your business and career. Like, that's what we're talking about. And at some point, we were about 60%, 80% through the manuscript. He said, hey, I don't think we've really nailed what gets in people's way. I didn't have a good answer. I actually didn't know, because people email us back when they have great successes, but there's a barrier to email somebody and say, hey, I'm really struggling. So we don't get as many of those. So we spent 6 months digging into what gets in people's way. And we asked a simple question in hundreds of workshops that we were leading, I and the whole team. Name somebody that you wanted to reach out to, but you hesitated. Okay, got it. Everybody's got, oh yeah, it's Jane Smith. Write into chat or tell us if we're in live, we'll flip chart it. Exactly what was in your mind that caused you to hesitate. And we just kept collecting verbatims until there weren't any more. So we heard nothing new. And we found out there's 5 lies that are in people's heads. And I won't give you all of them, but they're in the book. But really specifically, they relate to this idea of, I don't think I can add value. Well, I'll give you the 5 quickly. I can't do it, which every complex skill is learned and earned, so we know people can do it. And we give some other solutions
this is to
for that.
reaching out to someone new or someone that they feel the power dynamics offers.
Yeah, or for what hesitated for any reason. Like some of the verbatims were, I don't know what value I can add. They're too senior to me. I don't know what they need. I'm afraid I'll do it wrong. I'm afraid I'll look bad. I'm afraid I'll come across as salesy. I'm too busy. Like, there were just so many verbatims, like you wouldn't believe it, but they bucketed into 5 categories. So I can't do it. If you topple over that, I don't know what to do. That's like, well, I know I can reach out to Jane, but I don't know what she wants. So our solution there is to ask her what she wants. Like, hey, what can I be helpful? How can I, give perspective, whatever. The third lie is I might do it wrong. So that's usually asking for some help from somebody internally or a friend, or how should I word this, whatever. If you get through that, the 4th lie is I'm too busy. And that's just crap.
That's
that's just, you just got to do it.
You've chosen to not make it a priority. I say you're not allowed to say there's not enough time. Like, I have chosen to not make relationship building a priority. And that's fine as long as you've chosen it and it hasn't
but don't fool
chosen
yourself.
you.
Yes. And then exactly. And then the fifth lie is I'm going to look bad. And what's underneath that is the fear
Mm,
of rejection. So
yeah.
there it's just that we've got to just, we might have to make 10 outreaches to get one reply. That's okay. We win when we hit send. Even I actually think, hey, I'd love your feedback on this. Like, let's say we write a little thought piece to somebody. Hey, hope you had fun in Iceland. Here was my favorite restaurant. Wondered if you got there. I actually think it's oddly maybe better if they don't reply to, let's say it was on email. Like we
Mhm.
think the a great win is they reply right away. Yeah, I went to that restaurant. It
Yeah.
was great. That is great. But if that email sits in their inbox for 3 weeks and they see, say you send that to me, I see K, 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 K.
Mhm.
I'm probably likely to see that 500 times over a few weeks.
Yeah.
K,
Yeah,
K,
yeah.
K, K, K is on my mind. So as odd as it sounds, I think it can almost be better if they don't reply. We think
Mm,
that's a fail. I think it's a win. We win when we hit send. My point with all that is that we th- I think it's so easy, especially for younger folks, but I see this in very tenured people. It's so easy to get in our own way,
yeah.
and we got to get out of our own way.
Yeah. On that point on rejection, one of our guests, Noah Kagan, he had this thing he called the coffee challenge, I think. And it's to basically train your rejection muscle.
Oh, he
And
asked for like a discount on
yeah,
coffee or something. Yeah, tell
so
me
you,
more. That I've
so
heard
you
about it.
basically walk into a Starbucks or your local coffee shop, and as you're getting rung up, you just turn to the cashier deadpan and say, "Could I get a 10% discount?" And then you just lock eyes with them. You don't say like, "Hey, I'm just trying to grow my confidence muscle," or "I read it," but you just lock eyes, and it's going to be super awkward, especially at a Starbucks, especially in America where there's not really a discount culture in most
Right.
transactions. And then they're going to be like, sorry," and then you just smile and you nod and you say, "Okay, thank you," and then you just pay, and it's that 3-second interaction that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand. It's so awkward. And you just feel like all these stories go through your mind. Like, I can never go to the Starbucks again. They're going to think of me as like this, like cheapo, this freak, this whatever. And then like 6 minutes go by. You're like, nothing happened. Like literally nothing happened.
It was
Right.
just fine.
It was, yeah. And so it is, I do think that rejection is a muscle that can be trained. And you're right. I mean, the
I
number
do
of
too.
times I've sent emails to people and just crickets. I mean, that's definitely, I have a lot of insecurities. Getting rejected in a cold email is definitely not one of them. Can I ask? Okay, we were talking about commonality, and so you're meeting someone, you meet someone at a conference, and you're like, "Oh, I like surfing, I like jujitsu. You have two girls, in elementary school. Your parents are immigrants." How do you recommend people take that information? Because let's say they're meeting, two people a week. That's 100 people a year. Are
Mhm.
they really going to remember that, person number 57
Mm.
is a huge Michael Jordan fan, right? Do you recommend note taking after a meeting? What's your approach on that, Mo?
Yeah, I think first of all, this is another area where we got to get ourselves out of the way. Some people resist on this and go, "Well, I don't want to. I'll take notes on client meetings, but I don't want to take notes on people. It's creepy." Like, no, it's a source of caring. Like, do you put in your calendar when your anniversary is so you don't forget? Yeah, like it's a source of caring to take notes. So I actually think this might be the good part for a second for you to show your system because it's so dang good. But couple pro tips on this. One, dictation is way faster than typing. So the app I've been trying out is Otter. It uses ChatGPT to transcribe things, and it even starts to synthesize things a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can, man, in 3 minutes, I found that you can talk about 10 times faster than you can type. So 3 minutes of dictation right after you had the coffee chat with somebody, right after that,
Okay.
you
Love that.
remember all this nuance and you just spill it out into Otter, and then you can just keep it there and append to each note with a person, or you could copy and paste it, put a CRM or an Apple Note or Craft or Notion or whatever. Um, I just think a transcription is super fast, and now with AI we can even synthesize it. and then B, doing it right after the meeting and having some type of appending. So we're just have one note per person, whether that's the transcription or an otter or whatever.
I love that. Okay, so I'll talk about the system.
Yay!
So the
Because it's so
system,
good, Kay. It's so
yeah,
good.
I'm not going to share my screen because it'll be all messy. But what's more interesting to you? Is it the reminder system or the
Yep.
classification system?
Both. I think both
Both.
are brilliant,
Okay.
and I think your audience would really benefit from it because
So
you're a master at creating process around
Uh,
this.
Thank you. And it's funny. I've done not that many videos on it because it's so second nature. So
Yeah.
okay, I'll talk about the classification system since we just talked about that. Basically, every time I meet a person, I think of them in 4 categories, and I don't think this is creepy because I think it's just I can care better. It's like I like the
Exactly.
wedding anniversary reminder. It's like you're not going to not write it down. That doesn't make you transactional if
Yeah.
you write it down or don't write it down. And so I think of people in 4 categories. The first 2 categories are what I call the LinkedIn categories. And it's
Ooh.
like, what do you do functionally? Are you a lawyer, a software engineer, a producer, a writer? And then the second category is what industries do you touch? Do you touch tech? Do you touch healthcare? Do you touch real estate? And so on. The third category and third and fourth category are where the magic happens. So the third category is what I call hobbies and passions.
Ooh.
And I get very granular here. And it can be things like tattoos. Like a lot of my friends have like tattoo sleeves. And so I'm like, oh yeah, these are tattoo people. Or sneakers. Like I have a lot of friends that,
Ooh.
look for expensive, rare Jordans on eBay, right? And then it could be, social justice causes like gender equality or LGBT rights or Republican causes or Democratic causes, surfing, sports, jujitsu, so on. And so I have this like list of like, basically it's the question of like, what lights this person up,
I love
right?
it.
And I think that even if you don't take notes or do any of this classification, if you can leave a conversation with a new person and have a sense of what lights them up, that's the 80-20
Yep.
of it. And
I
so
agree.
what lights you up? And you got to ask the right question to get people to light up, right? And it could be as simple as what lights you up.
What lights
Right?
you up? Right. It's not that complicated. What are
You
you
know?
passionate about? What are you excited about this
Exactly.
summer? What do you do outside of work that you really love? Like whatever it is. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then the last category is what I call superpowers.
Ooh.
And so superpowers are kind of these like quirks, but I have to explain it. It's like modern art. I have to give you examples so that you know exactly what it means. And so one of my superpowers is I call trivia nerds. So like the kind of person that could win Jeopardy. Like we all have that type of person in our friend group. Another one is wanderlust, people who love to travel. And so you can get 2 of those people. You like, they'll be like, oh yeah, remember like the airport in Prague has like the best red ramen place. And you're like, yeah, I love that fucking ramen place. Like, and only that type of person knows this
Yeah. I
stuff,
know who you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have the wanderlust, you have the super connector, and this would be its own conversation. But the super connector, I would say that I think I calculated that I had done like what was it? I think 2,000 networking meetings in the past decade. I
Yeah.
would say 70% of them were introduced to me by one person, and those
Mm.
are the super connectors. They're kind of like the people that know everyone.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you befriend a super connector and they understand you, one of my friends, super connector, is my wealth manager who's been on this podcast. He knows me. He knows exactly the type of people that I vibe with energetically. He knows he's always up to date on what projects are interesting to me.
Yep.
And he just knows, where I am in the world, And so he just will be like, hey, Kay, I just met this really young person. Like, I just know you're going to like him. Or, hey, this VC could be a client. Regardless, you're just going to like each other. And he happens to surf. Like next time you're in San Francisco, go look him up. And so I would say 70% of the people I've met is through one person. And we're talking thousands of meetings. So super connector is another category. And for me, in the old days, I used to write this all down and actually have like a Airtable with like where you could like filter. I still try to do passions, hobbies and passions. I try to do. because that for me, it's like, oh, like I might see this cool YouTube video on surfing, and I'll remember 80% of the
Yep.
surfers in my network by memory,
Yep.
which is probably good enough. But sometimes like I just want to hit 100, right? And it just
Right.
and usually it's that like reminder of like, I haven't spoken to this person in 6 months. So that's the classification system. I'll pause there. I don't know if you have any follow-ups or things to
Well,
add.
I'll just say why it's brilliant is our brains are horrible at managing a complex process in our mind. Like we're distracted by the bright shiny object, the ding of Outlook, the what whatever the task is at hand, whatever's on TV if we're in the family room, and we're not good at remembering details. And I think what you've given people here is a masterclass on how to remember the details of relationships so that when some news does happen, a new surfboarding company that's super cool, the facts that the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, whatever it is, you can query a database and you can
Yeah,
say, who would enjoy this content that I really
exactly.
liked? And then I bet 99% of the time, there's at least one or two people that you thought, oh, I forgot about
Yep.
Samuel.
Always.
Like Samuel's all, it's been too long since I caught up with Sam. I'm going to shoot Samuel this YouTube video.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's not that, like you were saying, you remember 80% of it, but I think that's because you spend so much time doing this stuff. I think most people might remember 10%,
I think
but
you're right.
having a
Yeah.
system would let them get to 100. So I
Yeah.
think that it's so good. It's so good.
Oh.
High
Oh.
recommend. Let's call it the K class or the like the
The K classification system.
yeah, the
Yeah.
K classification system. There we go. With the K, we'll do a K. It'll be
Yeah,
awesome.
the KH, the classification system. And then the other that you have alluded to is the frequency of contact. So you had said for your VIP group, your 10 to 15 people, which I think if there's I mean, there's so many takeaways from this episode, but if there's one, it's like find your 10 to 15 people and make sure you talk to them once a month. I mean, I think that's
Yep.
probably one of the highest leverage things that you can do. And those 10 to 15 people will change as your career changes. I also love the pod idea that you had mentioned at the very beginning.
So good.
So if there's someone who I think I want to stay in touch with, I basically, when I meet them, I basically add a reminder. So it could be 6 months or 3 months. So you and I met, we vibed.
Yeah.
So I think I made the reminder 4 months because like it's a new relationship, but like I want to stay in touch with you 3 times a year. Like that seems like a
Yeah.
good number. And so I do this for everyone, and it changes from 1 month is the lowest to 1 year is the longest. And it's a guess. It's just a good old guess. Usually when I meet someone new, it's somewhere between 3 and 6 months. 3 if we really vibe, and 6 if we're like, don't know where this is going. So every day you could imagine, I meet hundreds of people a year. Every day I go into this list and it just pops in the new batch because they're all on different timelines, right?
Yeah.
So they're all kind of resetting at different times. And so there'll be a list of like 7 people and it'll say like, this is your 4-month reminder with Mo. This is your 6-month reminder with Jill. This is your 1-month reminder with Freddie. And what I do is sometimes, and this is where people get tripped up because they're like, oh, are you going to just reach out to them for no reason? Because your 1-month reminder clicked. I'm like, no. If I've played my cards right, I've actually subconsciously remembered, again, to stay in touch with about 80% of them, right? I hit my surfers with my surfing articles. I hit my wealth management folks with my wealth management podcasts. I hit my, self-improvement folks with my productivity, books and so on. But there's always going to be this 20% that kind of like, you didn't have a reason to organically reach out to them or you forgot. And so then I either think of like, is there a reason to interact with Mo? Like maybe with Mo, if I missed the interaction date, I'm like, there's like 50,000 articles I read about networking in the past 4 months. I just pick my favorite one and say, hey, Mo, how you been? I saw this article. I freaking loved it, especially bullet point number 6. You might not have thought of it. Check it out.
Love this. Love this. Yeah.
That's what I would do with Mo. And that would be the 4-month kind of catch up. And it's awesome. I mean, I've been doing this for a decade plus.
Yeah.
And it's just like every day. And that's why when If anything though, I have a harder time asking for help than giving. So I'm just, check this out, check this out, check this out. But if I'm like, hey, I could really use two new clients, I don't make that ask. And
Ooh,
that's something that I need to be better at, because there are all these people that are just like, what I'm doing to them, they're not doing back to me, because they don't know what I'm thinking about
exactly.
in this. They don't
Yeah.
know where I'm struggling in this moment.
Yeah. And I'll just to build, like, again, why that's brilliant. And then I'll give some practical thoughts that are ads for everybody is, that's brilliant because you've taken the work and you've spread it out into this little daily action that just takes a couple minutes. I mean, that's just brilliant. Like the most important things in life, staying healthy, having a good marriage, being a good parent, being a good son or daughter, like all those things, all the most important things in life are the things that you want to do a little bit all the time and not have big spans of times where you don't do it.
Yeah.
If you didn't work out for 4 months, well, back when you were investment banker, I got like, it sounds like there were some entire blocks of
I still
time.
did. I would do 100 push-ups every day.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Um, but for most people, like it's easy to like have big blocks of time where they don't focus on relationships, like they might not focus on their health. And we all know that's really bad. So you've spread it out in a manageable way. Um, the two other ways I'll give to maybe reach out are one is like the assets we might have, like a great article, podcast, all that. Those are great. That's my like the vast majority of time. That's what I do too. But two other ways that are really great go-tos are showing gratitude, a
Hmm.
quick little note that just says, "Hey, I was reflecting on that time together. We were together in
Yeah.
California. I just want to let you know that conversation when I made some craft cocktails and brought them by, and you said, I usually don't. I'm not going to spend. I'm going to spend my points here because I only get 2 of these this month. I'm going to drink one." And then the conversation we had afterwards, I might just say that was one of my most enjoyable times when we were
Yeah.
together.
Love
But
that.
just a little like showing that you care, that you feel
Hmm.
gratitude, or you're reflecting. Like that's always a good move. And the second one, I'll ask or I'll share is asking for help. And because you brought this up, some research that actually Adam Grant did, back to Adam, everything goes back to Adam Grant, is that mutually beneficial relationships are the strongest.
Yeah.
And when I
Hmm.
read that paper, I just thought that is so profound. Like, as a service provider, as the investment banker, the lawyer, the accountant, we can think that we are the service provider. We only help in this direction. We do not ask for help, and we can actually stunt our or slow down our relationships. A great way to deepen a relationship is to ask for help. And a subset of that in our little Venn diagram is to ask for advice. A great way to ask for advice might be to state a thing you want and then say, "I really trust your judgment or really value your opinion. What would you do if you were me?"
Yeah.
So, like if I'm Kay, the audience can think of like what they would do. But if I'm a Kay, because we've got you as an example, you might not ask for a direct referral, but maybe you will. But you might say, "Hey, I've got 2 slots open in my coaching business. Um, Janine, I just really value your opinion. I'm curious, what would you do if you were me?"
Yeah. Good.
It's a great
I
way of
love
asking
that.
for help because it's like right next to asking for help, but not exactly.
Hmm.
And
I love
and then
that.
what's Janine gonna do? She's like, "Well, can I introduce you to some people? Have you thought about speaking at this conference? Where I'm actually on the board. I maybe could." So what happens is people start giving you great ideas you might not have thought of, but usually they also start enrolling in the project, if you will, into the next step. Yeah. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, but there's so many, I guess my bow on that is there's so many great ways to follow up that if we haven't thought of it, it's our own fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Last question for you. I mean, I could talk about this we're going to have to do a round two.
Well, we are because I'm going to have you on our show, Real
All right.
Relationships, Real Revenue. So, like, part 2 will be over on my channel. It's going to be so great.
Yes, I love it. So last question, and this probably applies to everyone, but the person that maybe is a little bit more reserved, or just, you and I, we ooze this stuff out. It's kind of, second nature for us. When you're actually sitting in front of someone, let's use in person just to make it simpler. What are some good kind of tips to make the actual encounter, the actual networking
Mm.
meeting as, productive or as great as possible?
That is what a great ending question. Well, there's more than we can cover as we sprint to the end, but I'll just say this. We wrote a whole training on this, and it's at givetogrow.info, info, and it accompanies the book Give to Grow, which is out this August in 2024. But we created the training so that you don't even have to buy the book. So if some of your students, sorry, some of your audience is younger and they don't have $20, that's okay. Go to givetogrow.info and you can get the whole training for free. It gives a whole 4-step process for this. But the thing I could mention here, I'm trying to struggle like if I should mention all 4, but I don't want to just spread it like peanut butter. I guess I'll give you number 1, which is focus or optimize for engagement. So I think a lot of times we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves for networking, air quotes, or business development, trying to bring in the next deal or whatever. That can end up the fault we can have is we can end up being self-centered and thinking what we want. And if we can flip that and think, what do they want? How can I make this discussion at the conference? How can I make this hour-long meeting at the client site? How can I make this enjoyable? How can I make it engaging? And if we focus on engaging, we practice in a different way. We think about what's the great questions that we can ask? What's the way to frame the meeting? What are the offers we can make during the meeting or the encounter? What are the give to gets we can suggest? What are the ways we can find follow-up ideas to be helpful, whether it's a 5-minute conversation outside the elevator bay at the conference, or it's a 1-hour formal pitch at the client site? If we focus on engagement, if we can focus on getting them talking and figuring out what they're passionate about, we are going to win the relationship battle. So is that helpful at all?
I think that is super helpful. And what I saw, one of my favorite answers and tips in your is like the ability to ask good questions.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a whole chapter on that. Yep.
And a good question is not actually a long question. I found that the measure of a good question is inversely related to the length of the question.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, and
you
why?
don't need a paragraph.
Why was that the case?
Yeah, tell me more. Yeah, like there's so many, like a lot of times the best question is quite short.
Exactly. Well, Mo, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. I'm like blown away. I got my homework, especially I'm gonna do thought pieces. Like I think, why am I spraying and praying just all these one-off emails when I could just do 3 thought pieces and just bang those? So
would it be helpful if I gave those a review once you had a draft?
Absolutely. Thank you for that kind offer.
Yes. Look, we have a follow-up.
I love it. Awesome, Mo. Well, where can readers, listeners go learn more about you and your work?
Yep. The big book is The Snowball System. That's been out about 6 years, done really, really well. I would go to that if you want this full comprehensive thing around relationship and business development. The new book that'll be out in a couple months as we record this, August 24, is called Give to Grow. And people can get that free training over at givetogrow.info. They can do that right now. It's live, even before the book is published. So those are probably the best places. And there's lots of great, they can find us on the Google if they're interested in our programs and things like that.
We'll link to all that in the description and the show notes. Mo,
cool.
Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
It's been a blast. So I'll circle back and we'll get you on our show and we're going to do round 2. This will be fun. We'll go even deeper.
I love it. Thanks, Mo.
See ya.